Orange County Tourist Development Council meeting of August 18, 2026. As we begin this morning, I'd like to call to order this meeting. We do have a quorum at this time. This is a special meeting of the Tourist Development Council. Let me remind everyone who is present to please silence your cell phones and any similar devices. Also, council members, if you wish to speak, press the button on the microphone to be properly recognized. Also, with that, I'm going to ask Mayor Dyer if you would not mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance, and then we'll move to public comment.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, thank you, Mayor Dyer. With that, do we have any members of the public present who wish to be heard at this time?
Good morning, Mayor. We do have some public comments.
All right, we're going to ask those members of the public who will speak. You will have a maximum of 3 minutes to make your comments, and we will perhaps begin in the order in which they indicated their desire to speak.
Thank you, Mayor. We're going to go ahead and get started. Mr. Terry Prather, Dr. Maroon, followed by Allison Yerkes, please. Please come up to the podium, state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
3 minutes. Good morning, mayors and members of the council. Terry Prather, 1610 Rock Lake Drive, Orlando, Florida. I have the privilege of being the board chair of Dr. Phillips Charities, and on behalf of the board of directors and our staff, we want to thank the co-chairs and the members of the TDT Citizens Task Force for their engagement and the work they put in to get us here today. We believe at Dr. Phillips Charities that an investment of TDT funds into the Eatonville Museum of Culture and History campus with Dr. Phillips Charities is a great investment for Orange County. We have a plan, a proven track record, credibility, and capability. Dr. Phillips' company and charities have been a part of this community for over 100 years, and we have invested over $270 million in projects and people in Orange County. I'm here today to ask you to support the recommendation of the task force to invest with Dr. Phillips Charities and pass this project on to the Board of County Commissioners for final approval. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Prather. We'll move to the next speaker, please.
Good morning, mayors, council. My name is Dr. Bahia Maroon, and I will be reading a statement from the Eatonville Vice Mayor, Angela Thomas. I support Dr. Phillips Charities. Their plan can help create a beautiful, prosperous Eatonville where residents can live, work, grow, and thrive. And we deserve it. With Dr. Phillips Charities partnership, Eatonville can increase revenue, create new opportunities, and strengthen our community. Dr. Phillips Charities has already shown they can deliver. And what we need now is leadership that turns vision into action, starting immediately. Dr. Phillips Charities can help elevate Eatonville's rich history while building a future of opportunity for both current residents and those who choose to call our town home. We can honor our history, grow economy, and build the beautiful, thriving Eatonville we deserve. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much for your comments, Dr. Maroon. Next speaker, please.
Yes, good morning. My name is Allison Yurko. I'm a board-certified local government lawyer. I've been working with Commissioner Semrad's team at the request of Winter Park Mayor DeCiccio on a pro bono basis. I had put together a motion for your consideration. We do need a recommendation per statutory requirement in order to utilize funds from TDT for the funding of public facilities. That is something that absolutely can be done under the current wording of the statute, under subparagraph 6 with your recommendation. We believe that it's long overdue that we begin to look at the use of these funds. There is a requirement that 40% of your total TDT revenues have to be used for promotion. We can meet that. If we can meet 30%, we can meet 40%. There's a requirement that 2/3 of the membership of the Board of County Commissioners would have to approve this if you recommend it to them. There is a requirement that there be only 70% of funding from tourist development tax revenues for the public facilities. That could be met by augmenting the additional 30% with the creation of something like a special benefit district, that something like Seminole County has done recently in connection with their stadium or facility that they'd like to build. We would respectfully request that you take a hard look at this recommendation. We did not get it to the TDT Advisory Task Force until late in the process because it was initially stated that you could never fund public facilities with the TDT revenue, but the legal department very skillfully agreed as points were brought up that yes, you could. It's hard to do, but we can absolutely do that. Why wouldn't we try? Why wouldn't we look at something like a visitor rail program where you take the existing stations in Orange County and you keep them open 7 days a week so that people can really rely on them, maybe 7 to 7. Maybe you take that and you pair it up with an on-demand service, kind of like Scout in Seminole County, for visitors who are going to those stations who want to have an on-demand service to their hotel or motel. And that would be within a defined benefit district. And bingo, what if you then paired that up with a Lynx shuttle that ran every 15 minutes from the Sunrail station in Sand Lake to the airport and convention center? I grew up down there. I went to Oak Ridge High School. Those places are not very far away from each other. We need your recommendation today in order to do this. And with that, it's long overdue. It will increase tourist-related businesses and provide a much-needed mechanism to finally start reducing some of the congestion on our roads. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ms. Yurko. We'll move to the next speaker, please.
Mr. Steve Hogan, please. Ms. Melissa Marshall, followed by Deloria Nelson, please. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Deloria Nelson Street, a West Orange County resident, mother and grandmother. I spent most of my career, or all of my career in HR, developing people and helping them understand possibilities. Having worked at both Walt Disney World and Charles Schwab, I know a little something about great experiences and sound investments. The I Am Children's Museum is an opportunity to create affordable and accessible experiences for children who visit Central Florida, as well as something for children who call Central Florida home. A 35,000 square foot learning library full of experiential experiences to help children realize who they can be, so they can go from I am to I can. I know from experiences, seeing opportunities and really being able to put the hat on of who you want to be make a huge difference in your life. Right at Disney's doorstep off of 429, it's exactly what we need. And it's an experience that will pay through generations. And so it feels like tourism with legacy, and that's an investment I wholeheartedly support. Thank you.
Before you leave the mic, I didn't quite get your name.
Deloria Nelson Street.
All right, thank you.
You're quite welcome.
Mr. Mayor, both mayors, committee members, Steve Hogan, CEO of Florida Citrus Sports. Certainly want to be here personally to thank the Oversight Committee and the two chairs for their tremendous work on this process. Also, I'm here to speak favorably, hopefully, in support of the campus extension at Camping World Stadium. This has been a 20-year journey to complete the stadium, which we're looking forward to do in time to kick off NFL football at the end of next year. I also want to thank the West Lakes community and the residents that live there. This has been a labor of love to partner with them for many decades now, investing in things that TDT cannot be used for: affordable housing, health and wellness facilities, foundation of Lift Orlando, and so many other things. That's just what our DNA is. Of late, the Expressway Authority is investing about $200 million in upgrades to access to the campus. City of Orlando, Expressway Authority, OUC, Florida Citrus Sports, and others are publicly, privately partnering to invest in the roadways that are adjacent to these facilities. We're adding a 150,000 square foot event center. It's going to do 100 more dates a year. So a campus extension that includes 1,000 spaces on a facility that has 3,800 spaces roughly for 65,000 people is the most dramatic weakness, I think, that all people that live in Orange County can recognize, and certainly those that look to book events at Camping World Stadium recognize. With an additional playing surface on top of this facility, that brings us to 5 fields on campus. So the event production, the quality of the experience for the attendee, and I think lastly, benefiting the West Lakes neighborhoods with actual public parking where people could make a bet on opening some new businesses is the cherry on top. I hope you'll support this effort, and I thank you for all of your work and time, and for this minute or two for me to come make some comments. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hogan. Next speaker, please.
Following Ms. Marshall, will you please come up? I apologize. Mr. and Ms. Black, I can't make out the name. Ms. Claudia Menendez and Lavonda Wilder, please, following Ms. Marshall. Thank you. Ms. Marshall, you're recognized.
Good morning. Melissa Marshall, Executive Director, Creative City Project, address 435 Rock Lake Drive, Orlando, Florida. My neighbor's over there, 32805. Thank you for this opportunity to share the vision for Immerse and participating in this process of evaluating worthy investments of TDT dollars, considering where those dollars can make the greatest impact. Last Wednesday, we had 147 artists come together, gathering at the Abbey for the Immerse Artist Kickoff to begin their collaboration for the coming festival. We recorded a short video of them saying thank you to this body and the community for this funding opportunity, and I hope you'll take a moment to jump on our social channels and watch it. Orange County's unparalleled creative community and these artists are why we're here and why Immerse has grown to where it is today. The Tourist Development Task Force has recognized the value Immerse is bringing and can bring to Orange County's tourism economy. They've listened when we've explained the need for a dedicated funding path to support our community's festival and its continued growth. For nearly a decade and a half, Immerse has navigated from funding opportunity to funding opportunity, with the TDT dedicated funding being the next logical step in line with our growth and vision. We're not asking for a handout. We're asking for a dedicated place within Orange County's tourism investment strategy to continue building the next major cultural tourism destination. The City of Orlando is invested in Immerse. Orange County is invested in Immerse. Our corporate partners, artists, cultural organizations, and hundreds of community partners are invested in Immerse. We're asking for a dedicated TDT investment that allows this community to plan and invest for the long term with the consistency needed to build Immerse into the world-class cultural tourism destination we know it can become. Immerse is already attracting tens of thousands of visitors, supporting artists and creative workers, activating downtown and giving visitors another reason to experience Orange County. Help us open this door. Invest in Immerse, invest in our artists, invest in our community, and help us continue transforming the global perception of our community as Creative City USA.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Marshall. Next speaker, please.
Good morning.
Good morning.
My name is Claudia Menezes. I am with a small business called Go Pegasus, supporting the Children's Museum. A Children's Museum gives families another meaningful reason to stay longer, return, and experience more what Orlando has to offer. Most importantly, It creates a place where children of all backgrounds and abilities can learn, explore, and play together. This is an investment in our children, in our families, and in the future of our destination. I encourage you to support this TDT funding allocation. This is a project that speaks by itself. I'm Children's Museum. We are all Children's Museum. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Next speaker.
Center has the potential to serve as a significant economic driver, generating increased visitation, employment opportunities, and investment. However, it is equally important that we address the associated impact of increased traffic and activity. A dedicated parking facility would help reduce neighborhood street parking, alleviate congestion, and improve traffic flow during major events. Therefore, by supporting growth and preserving the quality of the surrounding residents. This represents responsible development surrounding residents. This represents responsible development that benefits both the event center and the adjacent neighborhoods. We respectfully ask that you move forward with the funding for the parking facility, the recommendation, and we thank you for your time and consideration. I yield back the balance of my time.
All right, thank you, Mr. Black. Next speaker, please.
Good morning, mayors, council, TDT Advisory Committee. I am LaVonda Wilder, the founder of the Eatonville Chamber of Commerce. Last week, before we presented, I made sure to look at all of the previous videos, and I noticed that you continued to ask for collaboration ideas, and if anyone had thought about collaboration. What I found is that collaboration is essential to the future of tourism and the long-term sustainability of the historic town of Eatonville. Representing the Eatonville Chamber of Commerce, I believe the Chamber, the town of Eatonville, the CRA, can come together to bring partners together and create a unified Eatonville tourism experience. This past weekend, I had an opportunity to visit St. Lawrence Historic Church in Eatonville, Florida. They were celebrating their 145th and to bring tourism into our community. What we also found was that the town could not exist without the St. Lawrence Church. St. Lawrence Church also getting a little nervous here. You can't tell the story of St. Lawrence without connecting Macedonia Baptist Church, Open Door Church, local families, and the people who continue to carry our history forward. That experience reinforced one important fact. Our history is deeply connected across our historic churches, local families, and community partners. We do not need to recreate the story for tourism. We need to work together to share what is already there. Imagine connecting the CRA, the town of Eatonville, the Chamber of Commerce, cultural organizations, businesses, and community partners, not as separate attractions, but as one cohesive Eatonville experience. The experience could feature historic tours, cultural events, imperative signage, and support our local community. This is how history becomes tourism. Economic development, and that's how collaboration connects sustainability. 145th anniversary celebration reminded me that Eatonville has something special. We have an authentic story. Our history is already here. Our people are already telling the story. We're asking for an opportunity to bring those stories together and invite others to experience them. Thank you so much. Have a great day.
Thank you, Ms. Wilder. We'll move to the next speaker.
Mayor, the last speaker, Mr. Jim Hukel, if you please come to the podium. Please state your name and address for the record. Thank you. And that would be our last public speaker, Mayor.
Good morning, Mr. Mayor, committee.
Good morning.
It's a pleasure to be here. My name is Jim Hukel. I am the executive director for one of the oldest and fastest nonprofit organizations in West Orange County. I have joined the committee for the I Am Museum for Children with the emphasis placed on helping individuals with disabilities experience the greatest potential of learning that they can have. I've been very encouraged by the work that the committee has been doing to help make sure that every child has an opportunity. And it is my pleasure and my joy to be able to represent them today and encourage this committee. We have over 19% of our community that live with disability every day, and we need a place for these children to be able to run and play and enjoy the museum that many children do not get the chance to enjoy. I believe that this will bring opportunities for visitors from all over the globe to be able to drive just 20 minutes up the road to Winter Garden and experience a great time in a museum that is worth their opportunity and worth their time. So I highly recommend that the committee continue to consider this museum and help individuals with disabilities explore, learn, and experience the I Am experience. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Mr. Hookel. Are there any other speakers?
No, Mayor, that concludes the public comments.
Okay, with that, then we're going to close the public comment portion of the meeting, and we're going to move to the next item on our agenda, which is the Orange County Tourist Development Tax Citizens Advisory Task Force update. I do owe a debt of gratitude to our first Orange County Mayor, Linda Chapin, as co-chair, and Mr. Eddie Moratine, co-chair as well. I'll take you to dinner at some point. You know, I know that it's been quite a bit of work for you to keep our Citizens Advisory Task Force moving forward. We do appreciate all members for the work that you have been doing in a relatively short time. I hope that all members believe that the work that you have done has been significant work for this community, and the recommendations that you will make to the Board of County Commission as well as to this body are meaningful recommendations. So again, thank you for your service. With that, as we move forward this morning, I want to ask our co-chair, Ms. Chapin, if you would like to make any comments, and then we'll follow it up with Mr. Moratine.
Good morning, council members.
Good morning.
And audience members. Thank you for being here today. I have been delighted to honor the mayor's request that I be a co-chair. I have told my family that I was voluntold to work on it, but it has truly been one of the more interesting experiences that I have had. I want to thank the members of the Tourist Development Task Force, and I know some are in the audience, so may I please ask you to stand? They gave us a lot of time, a lot of good advice, and I believe a lot of good decision making. You know, this is such an exciting day in such exciting times. Election Day in Orange County, Florida. An election day that's going to bring change to Central Florida in many, many ways, and certainly to the Board of County Commissioners with the challenges that they are going to face, the referendum on property taxes, everything that lies ahead in these exciting times. But if I might take a moment, because there's no one in the room that remembers the exciting times that I have lived through. And if I could put in context for you, just briefly, the change that we have seen in my lifetime in Central Florida. My first real public assignment in 1980 was as a member of the Greater Orlando Aviation Authority. We were opening a new airport. And in 81, that happened, our magnificent airport. And the Wall Street Journal wrote an article that said, Orlando has picked a bad time for a new airport. They said they'll never fill that airport up. We had built the airport to serve 12 million passengers. I believe the current passenger count at OIA is approximately 57 million passengers. And so it was a very exciting time, and the growth and change that has taken place in this community over these intervening years has been a joy to watch. In my life, I would point out that everything old is new again, and that change happens all the time. I was the first Orange County mayor to expand the convention center. I was the first Orange County mayor to try and bring baseball to Orlando, for which I was personally sued by a member of the tourism community. So you will see that sometimes things come back, and that decisions are always important if they are made with goodwill and good judgment. I further have to thank the Orange County staff that served us in this exercise. And raise your hands, because none of it would have happened without you. Come on. We are so grateful for the hard work they have put in at a time when they had so many other assignments to take on. And so I want to bring forward Roseanne Harrington, Mayor Deming's Chief of Staff, who is going to introduce us to the process that was used. And my co-chair and I will be back to talk to you later.
Before we do that, Roseanne, let me just check. Mr. Moratine, would you like to have any comments at this time?
Thank you, mayors. Thank you, members of the committee. I just echo my co-chair's words of wisdom. We're so grateful to the committee, to all the work done by the citizens to provide counsel and advice in this process as we bring this to consideration to you and to the board. And so thank you for the honor, Mayor. I'll maybe add a word of gratitude to both mayors. This is an important day. It's a season of change. Over the next year or two, we're going to see a lot of transformations in our community. But we have been so blessed, and I'm so grateful to have been able to call you both our mayors in this city and in this county, and for the changes that we've seen. Certainly the work that I get to do every day would not be possible without great leaders like you. So thank you, and I'll be back in a bit.
All right, thank you, sir. Now, Roseanne Harrington, my Chief of Staff. While I have been preoccupied with various other things in the most recent past, my very adept and team of staff members led by Roseanne has kept our ship sailing. They have kept us on track, so I do owe her a debt of gratitude as well, along with our county administrator, Mr. Byron Brooks. The team have made certain that these meetings continue to move forward. So with that, Roseanne.
Thank you. Thank you, Mayor Demings, for those kind words. It's been an honor to serve you. Good morning, TDC, Mayor Demings, Mayor Dyer, Mayor Critton. Welcome to the TD Tourist Development Council and members. This morning, we are going to do a task force overview, survey results, TDT Citizens Advisory Task Force recommendations, questions, and then requested action. So Mayor Demings convened a 34-member Tourist Development Citizens Advisory Task Force that was comprised of representatives from all over Orange County. We had 11 municipalities. The commissioners made appointments. The mayor made appointments. We had veterans, labor, and the chambers of commerce all represented. Our task force co-chairs, which we are very grateful. Orange County staff has really enjoyed working with Mayor Chapin and Eddie Morton, and we appreciate their leadership. And the 34-member task force, which you already recognized, and it was an incredible experience having representatives from all walks of life, and especially the municipalities that this way brought in input from all over Orange County. In our first meeting, we got an extensive education on TDT and interest indicator application process. We saw a presentation by Assistant Manager of Fiscal Business Services, Danielle Philippe, Comptroller Diamond, and Senior Assistant County Attorney, Whitney Evers. And then we spent 3 meetings reviewing applications, and these were long days. And I should mention that all of these meetings were live streamed on Orange TV, and they were recorded, and they were accessible on our website, along with all material that was provided to the task force at meetings. And then the 5th meeting on August 11th, we went over survey results and recommendations. We had 24 interest indicators 24 organizations apply, representing over $3 billion in TDT funding. And when you look at this list, you see a wide variety of projects, some of which you heard about in public comment. And this touches every corner of Orange County, which is really incredible, which I think this was part of the mayor's goal, was to make sure that we provided accessibility to projects all over Orange County. The task force deemed 20 applicants were selected to move forward. 20 were deemed ineligible, 2 were deemed ineligible, and 2 withdrew their application. Each applicant had 15 minutes to present and 15 minutes for question and answers. At the beginning of this program, of this process, Mayor Demings worked with the county comptroller to try and find an organization that could do an economic impact analysis for some of these projects. And the comptroller's office selected Dr. Peter Bluestone from Georgia State University, and he provided an economic analysis on some of the projects. And he is available via virtually in this meeting today. And then the county attorney's office provided an initial legal review for compliance. And these were the 20 applicants that moved forward and made presentations. The presentations were incredible. The task force stayed until 5 p.m. some days reviewing this information. They had robust discussion, and I think that they should all be proud of what they recommended. And with that, I'm going to introduce Dr. Ryan Nickenbeers, who is our Orange County Corrections Department statistician, who had the pleasure of creating the survey that would be used and compiling the results. Dr. Beers?
Oops. Good morning. And thank you, mayors and Tourist Development Council members. And thank you to Mayor Demings and the Mayor's Office staff for the opportunity to present here today. I'm Ryan Nickenbeers, Research Statistician for the Orange County Corrections Department, and today I'll be presenting the survey results. And so the survey was given out to task force members. There were 2 questions for each applicant on the survey. The first question was a multiple choice question asking for respondent support of the funding request. There were 8 options, and if the respondents selected strongly support, somewhat support, or do not support, that was considered ready for consideration. If they selected refer to another grant program, too soon for consideration, or does not qualify for TDT funding, that was considered not ready for consideration, and there was also an option to abstain due to conflict of interest. The second question for each applicant asked about for any comments, and these were optional. And the last question on the survey asked about any recommendations to the task force. So the survey was completed between August 5th and August 8th. 32 out of 34 task members completed the survey with 41 questions. And the average amount of time spent on the survey was approximately 60 minutes. The task force met on August 11th to discuss the survey results and provide the recommendations. And we'll now present the 20 applicants in the order they presented. So our first applicant was the TDT Application Review Committee, and they were asking for $75 million to $100 million to replenish the TD ARC grant programs. And throughout the presentation, we'll be focusing on the numbers on the left, which are solid support and average sentiment. And originally, when we presented this to the task force, we presented the overall support of the support, which was the percentage of strongly support, support, and somewhat support. But during the meeting, they asked us to just see the solid support, which is just going to be the strongly support and support. And so in this case, that 91% solid support is made up of the 66% strongly support and 25% support. The task force also asked to see the average sentiment, which is the average of those who consider the project ready for consideration, assigning 0 for do not support, 1 for somewhat support, 2 for support, and 3 for strongly support. And the main idea with the sentiment is if it's closer to 3, that means there's a lot of strong support. Closer to 0, there's a lot of do not support. And so in this case, the average sentiment was 2.6 out of 3, and that was on the higher end of the range from 0 to 3. And we can see on the right the full results from all the respondents. So in this case, and it shows the number and the percentage. And so in this case, there was 66% strongly support, 25% support, 6% support, and then 3% too soon for consideration. And there was abstentions or 0 unless otherwise noted. And so we'll also look at some comments. So in general for the comments, comments and partial comments for each applicant were grouped into themes and are shown verbatim other than ellipses. Not all comments are necessarily shown under themes, but the full comments from everyone are available to you. And then the themes are relatively broad and similar across applicants if possible. And so due to time, I'll be only reading select comments, but like I said, the full comments are available to you. So with TDT ARC, there were 14 comments overall, with 5 related to strong support or fully funding. For example, number 3, I strongly support ARC funding at the highest level. There were 4 comments related to community impact or funding smaller projects. For example, number 3, replenish funds for numerous smaller scale projects, providing a wider range of community impact. There were also 3 comments related to program structure and standards. For example, number 3, program needs to create standards for grant recipients. There were also 3 related to funding priorities. For example, number 3, the arts have been funded handsomely over the past few years, thus it might be time to include more for ecotourism. Our next applicant was the Orange County Arts and Cultural Affairs. They were requesting an additional 1% to 2% of the first 4 cents annually for new and increased grant programs for arts and cultural organizations, and they currently receive 5% of the first 4 cents annually. There was 72% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 2.2. 50% strongly supported the project, 22% support, 19% somewhat support, 6% do not support, and 3% referred it to another grant program. There were 13 comments overall related to this project, 6 related to community impact and funding smaller projects. For example, number 4, these dollars are highly effective for making possible small projects that couldn't otherwise happen. There were 4 comments related to increased funding. For example, number 1, strong support, additional 1% or 2%, and 2 related to funding issues, The increase, for example, number 2, the increase in TDT revenue should provide additional funding. Our next applicant was the Orange County Ecotourism Grant Program, and they were requesting $5 to $10 million per year over a 10-year period to establish the Orange County Ecotourism Grant Program. There was 72% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 2.2. 41% of respondents selected strongly support, 31% support, 16% somewhat support, 3% do not support, and then 9% referred it to another grant program. There were 16 comments overall related to this project. 6 about the community impact of funding smaller projects. For example, number 5, small investment will yield sustained long-term gains for visitors and residents. There were 5 related to existing or different funding mechanisms that may be available. For example, number 4, several other overlapping areas of funding available. There were 5 related to needs clear processes strategy. For example, number 3, needs written strategy and qualifications for grant recipients. Our next applicant was the Orange County Natural Resource Tourism Infrastructure Grant Program. They were requesting $5 million per year over a 10-year period to establish Orange County Natural Resource Tourism Infrastructure Grant Program. There was 72% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 2.3. 41% of respondents selected strongly support, 31% support, 16% somewhat support, and 12% referred it to another grant program. There were 11 comments overall related to this project, 4 related to how there could be community impact of funding smaller projects. For example, number 2, demand is real, would allow the county to fund lakes, trails, and outdoor assets. There were 2 related to how there may be different funding mechanisms or low return on investment. For example, number 2, this project should go to ARC, not enough heads and beds for the investment, more for local citizenry. There are also 6 related to needs clear standards / strategy. For example, number 4, the program needs refinement. Our next applicant was the Florida Citrus Sports and Greater Orlando Sports Commission. They were requesting $25 million to establish a dedicated major events fund. There was 41% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 1.5. 22% of respondents strongly supported the projects with 19% support, 34% somewhat support, 16% did not support, and there were 6% that referred it to another grant program and 3% that does not qualify for TDT funding. There were 11 comments related to this project, 3 about how it could keep the county competitive or consistent. For example, number 3 would keep Orange County competitive, having funds available to attract last-minute opportunities. There were also 7 related to how there may be existing or different funding mechanisms. For example, number 1, they have the ability and have successfully accessed funding in the past. I don't believe this funding is needed. Our next applicant was the Orange County Convention Center. They were requesting $523 million for Project 5B, which was to construct a multi-purpose hall at existing north-south building. There was 50% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 1.5. 22% of respondents selected strongly support, 28% support, 16% somewhat support, and 25% do not support. 3% referred it to another grant program with 6% too soon for consideration. There were 17 comments related to this project, 7 related to how it could be a tourism asset. For example, number 2, a convention center is what TDT funds were originally established to fund. Shovel ready, hits the ROI, will add heads and beds, increase tax base, stimulate reinvestment, substantial economic benefit in jobs and other new development. There were 5 related to delaying or reevaluating the expansion. For example, number 3, I believe it best to complete the project currently under construction and then reevaluate. There were also 3 related to how there could be questionable demand or tourism impact. For example, number 2, too much money for little economic impact. Our next applicant was Alcrest Capital, and they were requesting $48 million for the Florida Freshwater Discovery Center. There was 13% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 0.9. 9% of respondents selected strongly support, 3% support, 6% somewhat support, and 28% do not support. 3% referred it to another grant program, with 47% considering it too soon for consideration, with 3% does not qualify for TDT funding. There were 11 comments related to this project, with 8 about how it may be an interesting project but needs more development. For example, number 6, interesting project with exciting technology. I would like to see this more developed. Our next applicant was the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community. They were requesting $53 million for the Zora Neale Hurston International Museum of Arts, Heritage, and Culture. There was 44% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 1.7. 25% of respondents selected strongly support, 19% support, 13% somewhat support, and 16% did not support. 6% referred it to another grant program, while 22% considering it too soon for consideration. There were 16 comments related to this project, 6 related to how it could be a tourism asset. For example, number 2, this project will make a major impact on tourism in the town of Eatonville. This applicant already brings thousands of visitors annually to the Zora Festival. This project will strengthen those numbers. There were 8 comments related to how they could collaborate with other Eatonville projects. For example, number 2, all the Eatonville projects collaborate and return once they have a unified site and project plan. Our next applicant was Florida Citrus Sports, which was requesting $54 million to construct a multi-level parking structure on the Camping World Stadium campus. There was 47% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 1.5. 22% of respondents selected strongly support, 25% support, 19% somewhat support, and 25% did not support. 3% referred it to each of another grant program, too soon for consideration, or does not qualify for TDT funding. There were 14 comments overall related to this project, 7 about how it could be a much-needed improvement. For example, number 1, much-needed project to attract high-level events. There were also 4 comments related to how there may be questionable tourism impact. For example, number 3, no TDT impact, a nice-to-have but do not need project. Our next applicant was the Orange Audubon Society. They were requesting $20 million for the Orange Audubon Natural History Museum. There was 38% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 1.9. 16% of respondents selected strongly support, 22% support, 19% somewhat support. 41% referred it to another grant program, and 3% too soon for consideration. There were 14 comments overall related to this project, 6 of how it could be a tourism asset. For example, number 1, this would help turn a great county asset into a real tourism draw. There were 8 comments related to how it may be referred to ecotourism or another grant program. For example, number 3, I believe the Ecotourism Infrastructure Grant Program, most appropriate avenue for supporting this project. Our next applicant was the Creative City Project. They were requesting $22.5 million for the Immerse Festival. There was 45% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 2.1. 32% of respondents selected strongly support, 13% support, 10% somewhat support, and 10% did not support. 32% referred it to another grant program, while 3% considered that it does not qualify for TDT funding. There is also 1 abstention, so the percentages are out of 31 instead of 32 in this case. There were 13 comments overall related to this project, 3 of how there could be a high economic impact or return on investment. For example, number 2, this is such a massive success of local talent, excellent readiness, tourism collaboration, and economic benefit. There were 9 comments related to how it may be referred to ARC or another grant program. For example, number 3, great project, would support this under one of the smaller grants, ARC or ACA. Our next applicant was the Florida Museum of History. They were requesting $30 million to $50 million for the Florida Museum of History. There was 16% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 1.1. 13% of respondents selected strongly support, 3% support, 6% somewhat support, and 25% did not support. 9% referred it to another grant program, 41% considered it too soon for consideration, and 3% that it did not qualify for TDT funding. There were 14 comments overall related to this project, 5 about how they could collaborate with other Eatonville projects. For example, number 3, I am hopeful that the applicant can coordinate with the Eatonville applicants, resubmit. There were also 6 comments related to how it may be an interesting project but needs more development. For example, number 3, this is a cool museum but is premature as they don't have land or entitlements. Our next applicant was the Dr. Phillips Center for the Performing Arts. They were requesting $750 million to advance the master plan projects. There was 55% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 1.6. 19% of respondents selected strongly support, 35% support, 23% somewhat support, and 19% did not support. 3% referred it to another grant program, and there was 1 abstention. There were 14 comments related to this project. 3 about how the project could be fully funded or as a tourism asset. For example, number 2, world-class project, brings visitors, enhances downtown for visitors. I would like to see significant funding as the project ranked well in the last cycle but did not receive funding. There were 8 comments related to how there may be high cost or the project could be partially funded. For example, number 1, great regional asset, huge request, not convinced it should be funded immediately, could be partially funded. Our next applicant was the University of Central Florida. They were requesting $119 million to advance 3 complementary capital projects. There was 35% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 1.1. 16% of respondents selected strongly support, 19% support, 13% somewhat support, and 42% did not support. 7% referred it to another grant program, while 3% considered that it did not qualify for TDT funding, and there was 1 abstention. There were 12 comments overall related to this project, 4 about how it could be a tourism asset. For example, number 2, strongly support TDT funding for UCF's capital projects. Investment in larger scale infrastructure will enhance UCF's facilities while creating opportunities to attract additional sporting events, bringing more visitors and economic impact. There were 5 comments related to how there may be existing different funding mechanisms. For example, number 3, UCF has other alternative sources of funding. TDT funds are not appropriate for these projects. Our next applicant was Dr. Phillips, Inc. They were requesting $60 million for the Eatonville Museum of Culture and History. There was 63% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 2.1. 41% of respondents strongly supported the project, 22% support, 16% somewhat support, and 9% do not support. 6% referred it to another grant program, and 6% considered it too soon for consideration. There were 17 comments overall related to this project, 9 about how it could be the most viable Eatonville project due to the proven track record. And for example, number 2, in looking at all the Eatonville projects, this one is the best. It is shovel-ready, well-funded, and managed. There were 6 comments relating how they could collaborate with other Eatonville projects. I strongly encourage the applicants and the county to work to involve the applicants for other projects and reconceive this project. Our next applicant was Orlando City Baseball Dreamers, and they were requesting $975 million for a Major League Baseball stadium. There was 13% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 0.9. 13% of respondents selected strongly support, 16% somewhat support, 29% do not support, and 42% considered it too soon for consideration. And there was also 1 abstention. There were 13 comments related to this project, 4 about how there could be a high return on investment. For example, number 1, an MLB stadium represents one of the strongest opportunities to generate tourism, create high-paying jobs, and attract visitors from outside the region. There were 8 comments related to no team or location. For example, number 4, this is a cool opportunity, but it's premature as they don't have the land, the team, or the entitlements. Our next applicant was 8 Waves Corporation. They were requesting $25 million for the I Am Children's Museum. There is 50% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 2.0. 22% of respondents selected strongly support, 28% support, 25% somewhat support, and 25% referred it to another grant program. There were 15 comments overall related to this project, 7 about how it could be a ready project and could have a community impact. For example, number 4, Orange County deserves a children's museum, and this is a mature shovel-ready project that will benefit visitors and residents. There were also 9 comments related to how there may be a questionable location or tourism impact, and it may require further evaluation. For example, number 3, not sure this location is prime for turning the museum into a real tourism draw. Great concept. Our next applicant was the Town of Eatonville Community Redevelopment Agency. They were requesting $22.5 million for the Eatonville Heritage Tourism District. There was 22% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 1.4. 9% of respondents selected strongly support, 13% support, 13% somewhat support, and 13% did not support. 22% referred it to another grant program, 28% too soon for consideration, and 3% that it did not qualify for TDT funding. There were 14 comments overall related to this project, 7 about how they could collaborate with other Eatonville projects. For example, number 2, with multiple entities seeking TDT funding for Eatonville, collaboration should also be encouraged to align efforts. There were 7 comments related to how it could be referred to in other grant programs or CRA clarity. For example, number 5, TDT funding is premature given the current uncertainties surrounding the Town of Eatonville CRA. Greater clarity on the CRA is needed. Our next applicant was the City of Ocoee, and they were requesting $30 million for the expansion of the Forest Lake Golf Club. There was 34% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 1.4. 16% of respondents selected strongly support, 19% support, 19% somewhat support, and 19% do not support. 22% referred it to another grant program with 6% that it does not qualify for TDT funding. There were 9 comments related to this project, 7 about how it could be a ready project and could be a tourism asset. For example, number 7, this project is new, unique in concept that can drive TDT revenue by expanding the geographic pull, northwest portion of Orange, and demographic of events, smaller, medium-sized engulfing tourism. There were also 3 comments related to how there may be funding concerns. For example, number 2, county attorney was clear that golf course improvements aren't unauthorized TDT use. Eligible parts may find a home at ARC. Our last applicant was Orange County Public Schools, and they were requesting $20 million for the School of Arts and Entertainment at Cherokee. There was 19% solid support for this project with an average sentiment of 0.8. 9% of respondents selected strongest support, 9% support, 6% somewhat support, and 41% did not support. 28% referred it to another grant program, and 6% that it did not qualify for TDT funding. There were 12 comments related to this project, 5 about how there may be existing or different funding mechanisms. For example, number 5, OCPS has other resources to complete this project. There were also 8 comments related to how there could be a questionable tourism impact or qualifications. For example, number 4, a wonderful restoration. School's primary purpose is education, not drawing tourists. And so the last question on the survey asked about any comments or recommendation from the task force. And so each recommendation or partial comment was separated and grouped into themes, and those full comments are available to you. There were 19 respondents overall to this question, and so 8 of those comments were related to each of broader uses of TDT funds, projects to support, TDT accounting review, and then there were 3 related to each of the process, statutory reduction, thank you, Visit Orlando, and 1 related to new tax. So we'll look at a few of those comments. Like I said, 19 respondents overall, and so there were 8 related to broader uses of TDT funds. For example, number 2, if the majority of the task force supports an effort to expand the uses of TDT, we could suggest additional uses, but not prescribe specific approach. With many changes ahead, the County Commission itself will be best positioned to make those decisions. And this is a continuation of those 8 that were related to broader uses of TDT funds. For example, number 6, the Commission should start an aggressive effort to expand uses of the funds for workforce housing and transportation needs. There were 8 comments related to projects to support, and this was a bit miscellaneous with different projects being advocated by task force members. For example, number 3, task force concentrate on more of the smaller projects to fully fund them. They have no access to public funds, as some of the large asks we get to do. For example, and also, for example, number 5, funded venues should deliver real net benefit to workers and community, not just heads in beds. There were 8 comments related to TDT accounting review. For example, number 8, audit current TDT spending to seek all funds spent on promotion before funding major capital programs. There were 3 comments related to the process. For example, number 1, establish an annual predictable application process with consistent application format and sufficiency review. There were 3 comments related to statutory reduction. For example, number 2, it is worth changing the law to require only 30% for promotion, thus getting to use portions for transportation, particularly Sunrail. There were 3 comments related to Visit Orlando. For example, number 2, the County Commission should examine the Visit Orlando funding and substantially reduce their guaranteed funding. I was hoping for accountability for their spending as well as presentation about where their money goes. There was 1 related to new tax. The county should lobby for a new hotel bed tax for transit or education. And there was also 3 related to thank you. For example, number 2, absolutely fantastic detailed proposals by all of our valued applicants, coupled with esteemed leaders on the task force, ran with precision by the Orange County Mayor, co-chairs, and administrators. Thank you for the fellowship. And so this last slide shows the 20 applicants, and they were sorted by sentiment, ranging from 0.8 to 2.6. And I'll just make a note that whether the applicants were sorted by overall support, solid support, or sentiment, all 3 lists had the same 4 applicants on top, which was TDT Application Review Committee, Orange County Natural Resource Tourism Infrastructure Grant Program, Orange County Ecotourism Grant Program, and Orange County Arts and Cultural Affairs. And it had the same 4 applicants on the bottom, which were Florida Museum of History, Orlando City Baseball Dreamers, Alcrest Capital, and Orange County Public Schools. And so I'll now turn it over to the task force chairs, co-chairs for recommendations.
Thank you, Dr. Beers. We're so grateful for you, that presentation, and your hard work to help us really distill all the recommendations by the committee and the votes through the survey. We certainly tested the good doctor's capabilities in the process, and he did not disappoint. I also want to reiterate my thanks to Mayor Demings just for the privilege of being able to do this with Mayor Chapin. Lord knows we all stand on her shoulders. What an honor to do this together. I get to present to you the final recommendations of the TDT committee for your consideration. So as you look at this slide, it is a great testament to the county that the wisdom behind some of these county programs specifically were so universally well received as things that our community needs that we should support. So recommendation number 1 is to advance the top 4 projects with the highest score, the Orange County grant programs, including TDT Application Review Committee, ARC, the Arts and Cultural Affairs, Ecotourism, and Natural Resource Tourism Infrastructure. Recommendation number 2 is to not advance the bottom 4 projects, including the Florida Museum of History, Orlando City Baseball Dreamers, Alcrest Capital, and Orange County Public Schools. The next slide starts with recommendation number 3. This includes to advance forward Dr. Phillips Charities, refer the Association to Preserve the Eatonville Community to another committee, and then recommendation 4 is to advance Creative City Project for $2.5 million a year for 5 years. Recommendations 5 through 10 are to advance the following projects: 8 Waves, or AM Children's Museum, Orange Audubon Society, Dr. Phillips Center for Performing Arts, Florida Citrus Sports Parking Garage, City of Ocoee Forest Lake Golf Course Expansion, and the Town of Eatonville CRA Historic District. Finally, the projects on the next slide are projects that did not advance through the committee process. Those included Orange County Convention Center, Florida Citrus Sports and Greater Orlando Sports Commission's presentation, and the University of Central Florida. There was a lot of debate and discourse, as you can imagine, around wider concerns regarding the use of TDTs and things that the committee should recommend for consideration as we think about the future use of these funds. And so I present to you recommendation 11 and 12. Recommendation 11 says the County Commission explore the avenue to advance alternative uses of the tax, including but not limited to transportation and affordable housing, or add additional pennies, or lower the 40% for tourism promotion and make it a legislative priority. Recommendation number 12 says that ARC grant program expand opportunities for special events and smaller projects based on feedback learned during the committee process. At this moment, I'll invite my co-chair, Mayor Linda Chapin, to join me at the podium that we might answer any questions that you might have. Thank you.
Okay, so as Mayor Chapin approaches, what I'm going to do at this time, members of the council, if you have any questions at this time, this would be the appropriate time to ask your questions, and depending upon the question, we may have staff respond, we may have legal respond, we may have the co-chairs respond to those questions. Questions?
That's okay. That's it. The one with the little person. Well, first of all, good morning, and thank you very much for your service and the entire task force. I know you put a lot of time and effort into this. I guess this is more of a question for staff. We went through this process in 2023, and from what I recall, the way we scored the projects then was we used a rubric, and we graded those based off of the economics, the ROI, the tax revenue, jobs, and so on. And this was based off of a sentiment. I'm just curious, Why did we use a different system and process to grade these projects versus what we did in 2023?
Thank you. To answer your question, in 2023, we did use a different survey tool. We still used the same matrix in 2026, the one that is used by ARC, and all members were provided with that matrix at the first meeting, and they were encouraged to use that matrix as they answered their survey. So once again, they did use the same matrix. ARC made some adjustments to it in 2024 to fine-tune it, but members were asked to use that, the presentations, and the application and the discussion in order to use this scoring. The survey was an idea that was brought forth by the task force. They wanted to be able to have it a little wider and have a little bit more ability to make comments and not be so prescriptive to line items on the matrix. So that was requested by the task force to use a different survey, and we made the adjustment based on that request.
But the economic impact study by Georgia State University did show clear ROI on certain projects as opposed to others.
Yeah, I'll just add to that there was an acknowledgement of that process from last time and appreciation for the matrix as a tool, and yet the feedback that some members who had served 3 years ago and were now on this committee felt trapped too early into a choice without understanding the wisdom of the committee. So we added the process of ordering both comments and member committee discussion before also taking the temperature with the survey, so that then we can kind of look at that together and make decisions that committee members felt were informed by their preferences and knowledge, but also by the wisdom of the committee. I hope that's helpful. You should know a good percentage of our committee time was spent figuring out the microphones, so you're in good company.
All right, we'll move to the next question then. Look to my left, look to my right. Oh. You have a question, Fred?
Thank you. So if I'm to understand, then ROI, right? I mean, business people, we look at ROI first and foremost. I'm curious, like the ecotourism grant program, and by the way, my kudos to everybody that participated. I tried to do a lot of work last night, and it's an amazing amount of work to go through this. The ecotourism grant proposal, I didn't see an ROI proposed in their proposal. Was that something that was delivered separately?
So with the two ecotourism grant programs, what they were doing is just laying out a proposal on how to establish two new grant programs. We did this with film, where the first step was to bring it to the BCC and say, this is a concept we would like to consider, and then staff went back and developed a program and brought it back for BCC approval. So we would do the same thing for the ecotourism grants, is if the board so chooses and would like us to move forward with consideration, then we would go back, staff would go back and come back with all of that information and make a presentation to the board on return on investment and the type of the projects, and then it would be up to the board to decide how to proceed. So that's why those two, they're new programs, and this is a process to just get them out there and get them started. Yes, and yes.
Sort of a startup fund.
Yes, yes.
For instance, you will have seen that a couple of the proposals were referred to this new concept. They did not fit anyplace else, although it has been a surprise to me that very few people are aware of the fact that the actual statute from the legislature includes inland lakes.
Which goes to healthy lakes and rivers. I don't think anybody's going to argue with that, but is it appropriate for TDT, which seems to be sort of the last place people come to try to get money, is that the most appropriate place for these funds to come from?
It was pointed out in the discussion that there are always other grant programs that fill in to such proposals. The TDT would not be funding anything on its own of an environmental nature, but again, the statute refers to inland lakes, and with grant programs from the state, from environmental protection, from Orange County, that is a way to advance projects, not using TDT for an entire project.
The next question I have goes to ARC, which is a fantastic program. In my understanding, very limited, admittedly, is that they approve through an analytic rubric $2 to $15 million projects, right? So we fund ARC at a greater level, more of those can be funded. Would it not be appropriate to take some of the ones here and then funnel them up through ARC?
And that is a decision for the Board of County Commissioners, and that is an option for them. But some of the groups felt like the ARC is out of money. It is funded using excess TDT revenue. So all of the funds have been spent, if you will. They have been promised to projects. And so the ARC is asking for replenishment of funds. Some of these groups felt like it was a risk. If ARC didn't get funded, then they would have no avenue. So they decided to come forth here. And then if ARC gets funding, yes, if the Board of County Commissioners so chooses, and that happened last time, where they referred some of the groups to ARC, and you saw them get, like the Manila Museum, get funding in this last 2024 time period.
Do we know how much money has been funneled through ARC in the last few years?
Yes, in 2023, the TDT Citizens Advisory Task Force recommended $75 million, and that is what the Board of County Commissioners approved. $75 million over 5 years.
Is there a mechanism then to grade how those projects went?
Yes, and so there's the ARC Advisory Board, and that meets throughout the year, and there's appointments made by the mayor and the commissioners on that. And they meet, they recommend projects, and then it goes to a funding agreement. So some of these projects are just now getting to funding agreements, and if the county attorney wants to weigh in, she can. So some of the ones, there's only one that I think has finished since being awarded money in 2024, and that's the Winter Park Playhouse, and that just opened this summer. So yes, and I would like to mention that Orange County has now hired somebody in the TDT grant administration position that will be evaluating all TDT funded projects.
Thank you.
And let me also just kind of remind all of us how we got here to this point, because I've heard several times throughout the task force, the advisory task force meetings, this was a rushed process. And let me just address that issue, because hardly the case. Throughout the last couple of years or so, since we last had a similar process, there were countless community-based organizations who would approach myself, who would approach the commissioners, who would approach staff, and they would inquire about funding from our tourist development tax revenues. And rather than have these conversations in isolation and not with full transparency, we were kind of faced with a legislative process here in Florida, where there was significant conversation about the Florida legislature potentially changing the eligible uses. And so while we had different organizations who wanted access to the funding, we wanted to make certain how much funding would be available. And I'll remind you that our Orange County Comptroller, Phil Diamond, had a projection for tourist development tax revenues that was somewhat a conservative projection. You know, we didn't have a crystal ball about precisely how much money would be brought in to be able to support these different requests or desires for requests to be submitted to the Board of County Commission. And so at the same time, the legislature is having conversations about potentially changing the eligible criteria. Then we were confronted with a situation where we had numerous extended legislative sessions that went on well into 2026. And as those legislative sessions concluded, it became very apparent that there would not be any changes during this current legislative session. Also, the projections, the conservative projections of revenue by the comptroller were far exceeded. We realized more money coming in than had been projected. So those two things put us in a position where now we're well into the calendar year, and under my authority as the CEO for the county, the chair of the Board of County Commission, I have certain authorities. And I have promised and said to different people within this community, we have to wait until the legislative session is over. We have to wait until we have a better idea what the projected revenues are going to be. And then I promise you, we will have a very transparent conversation with our community about our money and the current eligible uses for expending those dollars, which is the process that we just went through, okay? We could not put the cart before the horse and do what we have done at an earlier phase or stage because of everything that I just told you happened. So we had this process, similar to what we did. As a result of this process, you have these recommendations now that our constituents, made up of a cross-section of people, have reviewed the facts, they've been educated, and they've made their recommendations. The recommendations are coming here to the Tourist Development Council, and depending upon what action we take today, the recommendations will then be made to the Board of County Commission. The Board of County Commission is the final decision-making authority. It's a conversation, a transparent conversation that we have had now within our community about what the priorities are for how we will spend those dollars. You have all now had this opportunity to participate in that process. Some people wrote in the media that they were skeptical about the process. But it appears that they may have changed their mind at this point. And there were different influences in our community that were trying to put their feet on the scale and influence how these recommendations will come out. But it's you, the people, that have made these recommendations to the Board of County Commission, to the Tourist Development Council. I will hope that it is relevant and it makes a difference to the decision that this body will make today And ultimately, it will make a difference to the Board of County Commission in the decisions that it will make going forward. So it wasn't rushed. It was a process that got us to this point. That was a complicated process. And so I wanted to kind of at least bring all of us to the point of why we are here today, because we have outperformed in terms of our revenues, tourism visits, and we have money. We have the blessing of money. And everybody wants some of it. Everybody isn't going to get some of it. We have to prioritize, make the difficult decision who gets the money right now. Going forward in the future, there will be additional revenues that will be supportive of our community. So having said that, do we have other questions for the co-chairs, staff at this moment? I can't see on my screen where there are other questions.
I think Mr. McGavin.
Yes, sir, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for that. And, you know, there's no doubt that there's amazing projects here that all need to be done for our community. And again, applaud the task force. I would, in the past, thinking about, you know, what's being put in front of us is to recommend to the BCC a large amount of money based on these recommendations for them to vote on. And we have not, in the past, whenever someone has come to the TDC, they brought dollars and figures and cents and the ROI and pro forma on how they want to spend the money. We've been taken out of that equation in this situation, and we're being, I don't feel comfortable to recommend something because I haven't been part of the whole process. And I know there was conversations around ROIs, and I'd like to make a motion that all of the individuals that presented, that they come before the TDC and present to the TDC so we can see the ROIs and the pro formas ourselves and understand that.
Okay.
I would point out to the council that you are not being asked to approve the recommendations. You are being asked to accept the recommendations and forward them to the Here is the requested action before you. A recommendation to the Board of County Commissioners to accept the Orange County Tourist Development Tax Citizen Advisory Task Force final report. It is quite possible that you may wish to add recommendations of your own to the Board of County Commissioners, and I think that would be entirely appropriate. But you are not, I believe, Roseanne, being asked to say that you approve of what we've done. I would like to add one other thing, if I may. Feelings in this community about tourism right now are ambivalent. There are those who would like to see the TDT uses changed. There's a lot of sentiment for that. In fact, the task force was asked, do you want to move forward a recommendation that the BCC look into changing, look into advocating for change? They can't change it. Only the legislature can change it. And there was significant support on the task force, and I happen to believe in the community for such an action. I believe personally that the recommendations that you've seen this morning, which extend the uses further into the community, that acknowledge other needs in the community, that do fit the statute. We're not asking you to do anything that doesn't fit the statute. In fact, I really believe that you should consider the fact that we might have bought you some goodwill in the community. If the community sees that the tourism impact also serves their interest. It may protect what you all have in mind about uses of the tax. My co-chair?
Yeah, I'd only add to the wisdom of Madam Mayor, as you consider this role for the TDC, this very process, which honestly I expected would include a lot more political grandstanding, a lot more unproductive time in our meetings that we would have to wrangle. It was encouraging both to start with the formidable work of the staff to both vet, provide information, provide outside economic studies, really provide a way to transparently evaluate projects, to enter into it with a sense of confidence about what was being put before us, and then to see this council, despite all the different interests, the really strong opinions and feelings of everybody in the room about things that were not the mission of the committee, but are great concerns of our community, to harness the discipline and focus to stick to the task at hand. It's a great opportunity for us to show that our community can govern itself, that we can make decisions in ways that spotlight the wisdom of citizens and our governing leaders. It's also a great opportunity to shed a terrible light on our community. When issues like this, which matter, it's a lot of money, also can create so much division and noise, it puts the wrong spotlight on Central Florida. Lastly, I'll say, I consider all the applicants. It was not easy to know that regardless of how worthy all these projects were, there's not enough money for everybody. So having the amount of discourse, the amount of insight, the amount of evaluation presented in goodwill and good faith to this committee to consider, in order to know that we're still disappointing some. But even for those moving forward, time is money. Each of these projects costs so much, even before they get money from the government. These folks are raising money, they're spending time on plans, they're finding ways to move these projects forward because they don't have certainty about whether they're going to get this money or not. So I would just ask this committee to consider the incredible weight of responsibility on your shoulders to not only display the governance and efficiency of our community in making really important decisions at a time like this, but the impact it has on all the people that participated, both the committee and all the time volunteered, the staff of this governing body, and also all the projects and all the energy that was put forth in a process. And that's something I would not anyone involved to feel was for naught.
All right. Let me just say this also. There was, some unreadiness about a motion that was being made. And before we kind of address that issue, I do believe that it would not be advisable for the Tourist Development Council to attempt to go back and relitigate everything that has gotten us to this. In terms of the presentations that were being made, we had 34 members of this community who sat through the countless hours and days of those presentations that were very, very detailed. And I believe that it would be advisable to accept their report and move it to the Board of County Commission to deliberate and make appropriate decisions. I'll go to Mayor Dyer to see if Mayor Dyer has any comments or questions. And
I do. So the committee that was set up, the task force, was not set up pursuant to any statute or any ordinance or any process, right? This board is set up by statute. So we could have done that work, but the mayor in his wisdom chose to broaden that scope. I don't think that it matters one way or the other whether we accept the report or not. It's recommendations that are still going to go to the Board of County Commission. When we were doing the original venue deal, I knew the understanding was that this board, even if we voted against something, it would still go to the board with the not the recommendation of this committee, with the knowledge that this committee had voted against it. So
I think whether we vote up or down, and I'll ask the lawyer, the recommendations of this task force would still go to the Board of Commission. They just know whether it was a thumbs up. But as I understand what we're voting for, we're not, as Mayor Chapin has said, we're not giving our blessing to this. We're simply acknowledging that the work was done.
Okay, working, good. Yes, Mayor Dyer, you are correct. Under the state statute, the Tourist Development Council is tasked with reviewing projects and expenditures of TDC and making recommendations to the Board of County Commissioners. Now, if you find something that you feel does not meet the statutory requirements, you can certainly tell the board that, and the board is tasked with investigating that and researching that. But there isn't a requirement that this board bless everything that goes to the Board of County Commissioners. Either way, it will go to the board for a decision.
Okay, I have one other comment on that. With the time that's left till November, I don't see any way that this board could put in the same amount of time that the task force did to make any recommendations to the commission. I know on my calendar, I don't have how many hours you guys put in? 40, something like that.
It was a lot.
It was a lot. I don't have that time on my calendar to do and then get it to the Board of Commissioners, so I would not support the motion.
A reiteration of the safeguards that you all have in mind. The final decisions are not going to be made by any of us, except for Mayor Demings. It's going to be made by the Board of County Commissioners. They're going to see presentations. They're going to rank things. They're going to comment on the appropriate use or not use of the projects that we have talked about here today. And of course, the comptroller has a very healthy reserve fund set aside that will always be available for any downturns or for any difficulties. That should be reassuring to all of you as well. And you may, again, wish to have a conversation among yourselves that would add to the recommendations that we are sending forward and express your own concerns if you wish to.
All right, Mayor Critton.
Is it on? Okay. I know that there's a motion on the floor, and I listened to those 20-plus hours of task force conversations, so kudos. It was challenging to keep up and do other work at the same time at that time of the day. So kudos to you, Chair Chapin and Chair Morton, for your work. My only comment is an amendment to, a friendly amendment, of course, to the motion. That would be to adjust recommendation number 4, which was the $2.5 million over 5 years, which I know during your conversations as the task force, there was question about whether or not that would disqualify that group statutorily or by requirement, by threshold of that $20 million. And so my only friendly amendment would be that we accept and pass this along to the Board of County Commissioners, and only to raise that to $5 million over that course of time to ensure that they met that $20 million threshold.
Mayor?
Let me look to the county attorney's office to kind of respond on that.
I just wanted to clarify, Mayor Critton, are you saying you wanted to raise that up to the original request of the $22.5 million, which is what they had asked for, 2.5 over 10 years for 22.5 total? Is that what your amendment is?
Right, because I know that the recommendation was to do it over 5 years instead of the 10, which would have, the conversation was that it would have dropped them below the threshold. So in order to ensure that the recommendation was pushed forward, was just to ensure that they pushed that up to make sure that they met that threshold and that 5-year recommendation that was given versus the 10.
Okay, just to clarify, that $20 million threshold was not a statutory requirement. I don't know if it makes a difference or not, but and when I was asked that question at the task force, my response was, they're here, you've decided to hear from them at this point, you can make that adjustment if you want to. So I don't think that knocks them out of qualification, but I just wanted to clarify that that's what your amendment was to take them back to the original request of 22.5 over 10 years.
Well, the 2.5 over the 10 years would have given them the 22.5, but the 2.5 over the 5 years would not have met the 20 million threshold. So I was just trying to ensure that they met the threshold, even though it wasn't a statutory requirement, but just to make sure that they in line with the $20 million requirement that was asked of the applicants for the task force, only as an amendment to make the numbers cohesive.
Again, these will be recommendations to the Board of County Commission that will work with staff and legal on the specifics, and based upon the presentations that have been made, it's certainly within the discretion of the board to make those types of adjustments. You know, I believe that it will be advisable to recommend that this body recommend to the board to accept the final report. There are many details that still have to be codified, have to be worked out in terms of the actual funding amounts. I see the county administrator, Mr. Byron Brooks, who's here, and he did a presentation to the task force about the potential funding. Byron, I don't know if you want to address any of your presentation that you made to the task force itself, to perhaps bring some clarity there. Mayor Chapin, you can have a seat if you want at this point. Mr. Moratine, you all can be seated.
Mr. Chair, can I ask one quick question? I was going to ask about the funding, but the task force decisions were made irrespective of whatever the funding is available, right? You're going to give us a presentation on what the county thinks is available or the capacity for funding, but the task force's recommendations were made irrespective of whatever that funding was, right?
Absolutely. Right. And in fact, the discussion at the request of the task force, they wanted to have some indication, some sense of what the capacity might be. As I pointed out to the task force, that did not occur while they were deliberating in 2023. The discussion, the number that was identified as capacity occurred once the recommendation of the task force got to the Board of County Commissioners. So actually it was early in the process for us to have that discussion, but nevertheless, we indeed wanted to honor their desire to have some indication of capacity. And so the very short presentation that Danielle Philippe and Jay Glover and I covered with the task force simply tried to give some parameters. It really was more about parameters, and to show the interplay between what also was unique this time was more discussion about grant programs or pay-as-you-go versus the large capital projects. Again, in 2023, it really was more a conversation about capital projects with the exception of ARC and one other minor area, and so there was one big number. In this case, we showed is, generally speaking, a capacity number of about $1 billion, but depending upon how much is committed to grant programs or pay-as-you-go, it affected how much would be available for capital projects, and vice versa, depending upon if there's commitment prioritization given to capital projects, it reduced the amount that was available for grant projects or pay-as-you-go. And so we just simply showed that interplay and indicated that once the recommendations go to the Board of County Commissioners and we have some sense of their ranking, then our next step would be to develop a more definitive matrix for the Board of County Commissioners that show, as you look at these recommendations on the grant and how that spread may work, this is what it leaves for capital, as well as if you do this for the capital side, this is what it leaves for grant. So that was the kind of the interplay without, and I think you may have, in your backup, you may have seen that slide, that presentation, but nevertheless, overall capacity is about, again, about $1 billion, but depending upon how much goes to the grant programs, it affects what's available for capital. And again, we just gave like a few quick scenarios so that if $30 million went towards annual programs of pay-as-you-go, that would leave $925 million for capitals. On the other side of that is $70 million of it when you start lining up those grant programs like ARC or ecotourism or some of the other projects. We have to take those out of the flow of funds first. It left $175 million that could go to a capital project. And so that was the gist of the presentation. That was parameters that are associated with determining capital. I don't know if any questions about capacity. I'm sorry, about capacity, not capital.
So, Mayor Critton, the reason why I'm bringing that up is because those are the details that if the Board of County Commission approves it, there are yet some details with specificity when it comes to the actual dollars that you don't have today. But I understand the desire to try to get to the point where you understand what those numbers are, but until the board takes this action over the holistic available funding, that level of details has to be worked out, okay? And if we tried to do that today on each one of the projects, we would not be successful in doing so. So this is the only reason why I'm suggesting that if you like the project, you know, and it's part of what is being recommended now, to accept the final report, and then the rest of this has to then, much detail, much work continues with the Board of County Commission and even from the legal perspective to make sure that all of this kind of adds up. Much work will need to be done with the comptroller and looking at the actual balances, looking at real dollars. Okay. Whitney.
So, Mayor, just to bring us back procedurally, you had a motion and a second on the floor, motion by Mr. McGavin, a second by Mr. Sawyers to have each of the task force applicants come before this board. You then had a friendly amendment offered by Mayor Critton. I'm not sure if we had any discussion on the friendly amendment or if you're still interested in making that amendment, Mayor Critton.
I'll withdraw my amendment.
Okay, then you would need to vote on the motion on the floor.
All right, so Mr. McGavin, if you can restate your motion.
Okay. I wanted to make a motion that the presenters to the task force present to the TDC their recommendations with the financial impact to those projects.
There was a motion, and Mr. Sawyers, you continue to second that motion. All right. I'll call the question. All in favor of the motion and the second, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, no. No. Okay. All right. The motion fails. Okay. The requested action, yes.
I would move that the task force final report.
And just for the record, I know the clerk is going to ask how many were opposed. Mr. Sawyer, I didn't hear you actually vote, so say that one more time.
Mayor, my count was 5-2. It was 5 noes to 2
5 to 2.
yeses.
Okay.
The mover and the
Yes.
seconder
All right,
voted yes.
5-2. Let the record reflect the motion failed 5-2. All right. And Mayor Dyer.
I move the requested action.
Okay. We have a motion for the requested action. Second by Mayor Critton. All in favor of the requested action, let it be known by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed, no. I hear one no, Mr. McGavin. And Mr. Sawyer's no as well. Motion passes 5-2 for the requested action. With that, the next Tourist Development Council meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September the 23rd. Mayor Chapin.
I have one more word because, of course, I want to say thank you to all of you who give your time to this great community. I want to say that it was a real pleasure to do this work. I've made many new friends from the task force, but the best thing of all was that I got to work with my co-chair, Eddie Moreton, a friendship that I know is going to continue as he continues his good work in this community. So I wanted to say thank you to him.
All right.
Thanks, Mayor.
Very good. Thank you to the co-chairs and to all task force members. Again, the next Tourist Development Council meeting is scheduled for Wednesday, September 23rd at 9:30 a.m. With no further business, we stand adjourned.